Need a Wi-Fi scanner and survey tool that won't kill your budget? Try Wi-Fi Scanner for Windows. It's an all-in-one tool to explore Wi-Fi access points, test speed, and perform active and passive surveys. Built by Wi-Fi engineers for Wi-Fi engineers. Visit wifiscanner.com to start your free trial today.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Stand podcast. This is François, your host, and I'm here with Rowell today. Hey, Rowell, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. Very good. Thank you. Happy to be here with you, recording here our Back to Basics series of episodes. And in this episode, we're going to cover, the different Wi-Fi security encryption options. So we've prepared a little reference sheet for you guys that you can download if you head over to the Clear to Stand website. And we're just going to go over the different, I guess, security options that you have available over Wi-Fi, and then we'll go back into history as well to understand what we used to have, what works, what doesn't work anymore, and what you can use today.
Yeah, I think it's a good topic because maybe some of you might be thinking, well, we don't need Wi-Fi security. We have security on the network. Or, you have some sort of NAC involved, right? Network access control. But we do want to encrypt the traffic over the air. There's different ways to do it, some more insecure than others. And I think it just makes sense to know what is available and what you could potentially run into when dealing with future security protocols.
Yeah, and here we're talking about securing the wireless portion of the communication. So, frame exchanged between the Wi-Fi client and the access point. And historically, when the standard came out in 1997, they had a protocol called WEP, Wired Equivalent Privacy. And WEP was using the RC4 encryption mechanism, where they had the different key size of 64 and 128 bits. And WEP was, good at the beginning. You would authenticate to the Wi-Fi using a password. So the user would select the SSID, put a password, and that would secure your connection. But the encryption used was not very strong, RC4, and pretty fast. It got cracked, and then it became unsecure. And it was actually pretty fast to crack the password. So that became a big deal for Wi-Fi security.
Yeah, I just wouldn't use that one today at all, if possible.
Yeah.
I know there are probably some really, really old devices you still have to support that need to use WEP, but if you can move all the devices that don't need WEP onto another SSID with stronger security.
Yeah, using WEP today is pretty much like not having any Wi-Fi security. You can see it that way. Okay, but back in the day, it was a big deal because we didn't have any alternative. So they started to work on defining something new, and they came up. That's when they came up with WPA, the version 1. So that happened in 2003. And WPA version 1 was using TKIP with RC4, but it was like a stronger way of doing the encryption. It was still using RC4, but it was a stronger way to do the encryption. So we started to use this for the encryption with a 128 bits key. And at the time, we could authenticate to the Wi-Fi either by using a password. So that's what they call the pre-shared key option, or we could authenticate to the Wi-Fi using .1x authentication. So they introduced, what they used to call the WPA personal, the PSK option, and the WPA enterprise, the .1x option. They introduced that as well with WPA. The problem is that since it was using the same encryption, it wasn't long before TKIP was cracked as well. And then we were back to the same problem. Well, we had Wi-Fi securities that wasn't secured anymore.
Yeah, and I think I'm fortunate enough to not have been doing Wi-Fi during this time at all. So I didn't have to deal with WEP or TKIP.
Yeah, me neither. So yeah, we saw all the problems, but we didn't have to deal with that. So once again, they found themselves into a position where they had to find something better, and this is when WPA2 came out in 2004. So it didn't come out, a long time after, just a year later. And the WPA2 is now using AES for the encryption. So they use something AES CCNP, which meant that the encryption is really secure. And and even today, AES encryption is really secure. It's used for a lot of things
Hmm.
we do
Yeah.
online.
And I
So
would say
AES,
WPA2 is the most widely used
mhm,
security protocol today. Like
even
it's on
today,
every network that you'll see. Um, and I don't know. You said 2004. We've been
yeah,
using it that long.
yeah. 2004, that's when it got introduced, and then yeah, we've been using it for that long, and that's to showcase that the encryption is good. Um, and then and we also, with WPA2, we also had the choice of authenticating to the network using a password, a PSK or .1x. Um, and over time, the encryption stayed strong, but what happened is that we started to find flaws in some of the implementation of how we were doing some of the authentication, especially related to pre-shared keys. Um, and on the other end, computing power became more and more intense, and we started to use things like cloud computing. And so at one point, if you were using like a weak password with WPA2, you could actually launch some discovery attacks, even some brute force attacks. And with WPA2, you can even do this offline. So you could go on site, you could capture some frames, then you can go offline. You can rent some cloud space, run some brute force or dictionary attacks. And if the password is not long enough, you could potentially find it. And once you have it, since it's a pre-shared key, you can go back to connect to the network, but you can also go back and decrypt all of the traffic. So that was a big, one of the big security flaws that we had with WPA2. One way to combat this is to use a very long password, because then the brute force, is not will take years, hundred of years maybe, if you have a long enough password. So that's one way to kind of combat it. Or you can use .1x as well. .1x Enterprise is still very secure as long as you implement it properly. Um, and then over the years, maybe you guys, if you've been listening to the podcast for long enough, maybe you guys have heard of the crack attack
Yeah.
um, that came along and that exposed, some vulnerabilities. Sorry, that
Hmm.
word is hard for me. Uh, into the implementation of WPA2. So and also, like, 2004 is a long time ago. So
Yeah.
people, they started to work on a new version of Wi-Fi security, and in 2018, it came out with WPA3, which is a third version of WPA.
Hmm.
And what they did with WPA3 is they improved, they didn't really improve the encryption. We're still using AES because it's good, it's strong, but they improve all of the algorithm around authenticating to the Wi-Fi, especially with the password. So we don't
Yeah.
have the PSK anymore. We have something called SAE, simultaneous authentication of equals. And for the users, it doesn't change anything. You're still connecting to the Wi-Fi using a password, but then backend, the way they've implemented it is way more secure, more
Hmm.
robust. You don't have a shared key anymore, and you cannot brute force it, which makes it much more stronger
Yeah.
for the security.
Yeah. You
And
have
then
improved key exchanges over the air.
yes, exactly. And they also improved the security of some of the Wi-Fi frames that we exchanged that used to not be encrypted. Some of the management frames,
Hmm.
that's what they call protect
Protected
uh,
management frame
protected management frames. Thank
or
you.
management frame protection, whichever one you want to use. We'll be right back to the episode. Do you need a tool that offers seamless Wi-Fi analysis and troubleshooting? Look no further to Wi-Fi Scanner for Windows. It's a versatile 3-in-1 tool. Discover Wi-Fi access points with ease, assess speed and performance accurately, and conduct detailed active and passive Wi-Fi surveys seamlessly. It works perfectly with the internal card of your Windows device. The Wi-Fi Scanner Copilot feature is ready to troubleshoot common issues related to connectivity, performance, security, and configurations. Broaden your reach by analyzing remote networks with Optify and WLAN-PI integration. Dive into beacon information or delve deeper by opening wireless PCAP files. Visit wifiscanner.com and download a free trial today.
Thank you, Rowell. Yeah, so that helped a little bit. Some of the attacks you could do over against the Wi-Fi network. So WPA3, what's interesting is that it came out in 2018.
Yeah.
And today we're in 2024, and we're finally starting to see people migrating seriously to WPA3.
Yeah, I think a very slow migration. And one thing I would note too is that protected management frame is required in WPA3, where protected management frame existed even with WPA2, but was optional. And I remember when I had a client that was having these DAuth attacks over the air, and the only way to mitigate it was to enable protected management frame. But back then there were devices that did not like protected management frame, and so they either couldn't join or the Wi-Fi network was very slow. And so today with WPA3, we have to use protected management frame. And I'm starting to see it being used with newer devices. It works pretty well, especially with the .1x. But I think we should really consider moving over to WPA3 to improve security.
Yeah, and also WPA3 is mandatory on 6 gigahertz. So the transition to 6 gigahertz is also kind of forcing us to migrate to WPA3. And also, the whole new generation of client devices that are arriving on the market, they support WPA3. So that kind of, helps us also to kind of transition to WPA3. So today, if you're configuring a brand new Wi-Fi network today, I would look at WPA3. That's like the best option you could choose. So here we've talked about encrypted Wi-Fi networks that you need to authenticate to, either using a password or using .1x. But what about guest Wi-Fi? Is a guest Wi-Fi secure? Can we secure guest Wi-Fi?
We don't care about those guys. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So for any of those, guest Wi-Fi or public Wi-Fi, if you go to the coffee shop or the airport, you have those public Wi-Fi networks. Well, historically, these networks are not secured, right? They use what they call the open authentication. And so when you connect to the network, you just connect to the network, and there's no encryptions going on. There's no negotiation of keys, encryption keys, or anything like this. So you pretty much send your layer 2 frames unencrypted, and so if someone is there listening to the channel, they can actually pick up everything.
Yeah, and that's why the Wi-Fi security is important, is because of how you're able to sniff the frames over the air, and you're now putting trust in the application that you're using to encrypt its traffic. Usually nowadays it should be encrypted, but we don't know unless we check, right?
Yeah, and you're right. What you're saying is right. Like Wi-Fi is like a shared medium, and because it's wireless, anyone can just listen to that shared medium. So if you listen to that shared medium and you decode the frames, and these frames are not encrypted, then you'll be able to look at them in Wireshark, let's say. And you could try that next time you go to the airport, do a quick packet capture and see what happens. Nowadays, though, we may have encryptions in the higher layer of the OSI model. So, when you go on the website, most likely it's SSL, it's a HTTPS website. So even if you do packet capture on the open network, you'll see tons of encrypted data. But, if you're a malicious person, you might still be able to find like a DNS request or understand what the user is trying to do and use that for social engineering or use
Yes,
that
yeah.
to launch another attack, and then
You can do like a man in the middle attack,
mhm.
where you can try to get people to join your access point. You gather that traffic and then send it off, so you can do some reconnaissance. And actually, I
Yeah.
remember a long time ago, I forgot what it was called. I think it was called Black Sheep or something like that, where you could get a session over the air, grab that data, put it into your browser, and then go onto social media using that person's account because of the way the
Mm.
cookies were done. I forget. It was a long time ago, but because it was an open SSID, I was able to see that payload, and then you could just grab the session and basically browse their social media accounts as them.
Right. So that's, that you need to keep that in mind. That's why most people recommend to use VPNs if you connect to an open network, so you can at least, add a layer of encryption. But you may ask yourself, there gotta be a better option, right? We can do better. So actually in 2018, when they introduced WPA 3, they also introduced something called Enhanced Open. And that was introduced by the Wi-Fi Alliance. And Enhanced Open is pretty much the idea that we could have an open Wi-Fi, but with a layer of encryption using a protocol called OWE, Opportunistic Wireless Encryption. I think I got it right.
Yeah, it's good. It's
And
correct. This
and
episode is
so,
full of acronyms, right? So
good thing I didn't have to lay out CCMP. You guys can look at what this one is. Um, yeah. So what Enhance Open is that, the idea behind Enhance Open is that you don't want to change the user experience. So you just want the user to click on the Wi-Fi network and they connect. But in the backend, you want to add a layer of encryption. So it's using a Diffie-Hellman exchange to actually generate encryption keys between the client and the AP, to add that layer of encryption between the client and the AP. So you don't have any authentication, but at least you have some encryption. So if someone is just, capturing frames over the air, they'll just see a whole bunch of encrypted layer 2 frames.
yeah, I think OWE is actually really cool in the way how they do the Diffie-Hellman exchange through the authentication process over Wi-Fi. But one thing to consider with OWE is, like you said, it's just the encryption. There's no like user authentication, and so you cannot have this mutual authentication where you go, am I connecting to the AP that I think I'm connecting? So is this the AP of this organization that's providing this open SSID, or is it some other guy who's broadcasting the same SSID and I'm connecting to it? So that's just one thing to think about. I mean, it's one step forward from just having a pure open SSID, unencrypted.
Yeah. And I think, and also there's, you have to look at client support for Enhanced Open. It's not like the widest supported thing today in 2024. It might get better in the future. But more and more people are talking about a solution called open roaming for securing guest or open networks. So we might end up in a world where, open roaming is the way to go. And open roaming is using a .1x authentication. So that would be like fully secured for sure. That's for another
And
episode, I guess.
it is, yeah. And before we get into any more details, like technical details, one thing to consider is that with WPA 3 and Open, there is a transition mode to try to help the migration of these devices to the newer protocols, but still support devices that may not be fully supported on WPA 3 or OWE. So that's one way to do it. And I think we do have episodes that talk about the transition modes and how that actually works, because that one is unique as well, but it's more of like a phased migration.
Yes, if you're discovering the podcast with this back to basics series of episodes, we did record a lot of episodes about Wi-Fi security. So you could go to the website clear2send.net, search for these episodes. We share packet captures, and standards and all of this. So you can go back and take a look at them. For this episode, if you go to the show notes, you'll be able to download a PDF where we created like a Wi-Fi security reference table where it can organize all of the data we've been talking about into a nice table, so you can keep that as a reference. And then let us know. Let us know if you enjoyed those Back to Basics episodes. If you want to share them with other people, also feel free to do this. We would love to have some of your feedback.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you, Francois.
So I think that's it for this episode. You can go back and catch up the previous episodes of the series, and then we'll come back for more in the coming weeks. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Need a Wi-Fi scanner and survey tool that won't kill your budget? Try Wi-Fi Scanner for Windows. It's an all-in-one tool to explore Wi-Fi access points, test speed, and perform active and passive surveys. Built by Wi-Fi engineers for Wi-Fi engineers. Visit wifiscanner.com to start your free trial today.